Little girl in a wheelchair gets stuck in the rain. A soldier rescues her and asks, "Where are your parents?" She replies, "I only have a dad, but he doesn't care about me." When the father, a young billionaire, sees who is helping his daughter, he is in shock. The sky was clear when the car stopped at the corner by the bookstore. Emmy Royce watched through the window as people passed by, hurried as always, some casting curious glances at the little girl in the wheelchair. "I need to take care of something quickly," her father said, turning off the engine and checking his watch. His cell phone had already rung for the third time in the last 10 minutes. "The nanny called in sick, and I have a meeting in an hour. Stay here on the sidewalk right in front of the bookstore." Emmy hugged her teddy bear to her chest. Mr. Buttons, with his slightly crooked button eyes, was her most loyal companion. "Will you be long?" she asked, trying not to sound disappointed. Her father wedged the cell phone between his shoulder and ear as he took the wheelchair out of the trunk. "Just wait 10 minutes, princess. Daddy will be right back." He positioned Emmy on the sidewalk under the small awning of the bookstore, checked the wheelchair's brake, and handed her the backpack with her snack. Her shiny red shoes dangled in the air, a gift from his last business trip. Shoes she would never use to run, but which she loved all the same. "Yes, I'm on my way," he said into the phone as he walked away. "I had a setback with my daughter. The nanny cancelled at the last minute." Emmy watched him cross the street, gesturing excitedly on the phone as he headed to the corner coffee shop. She knew he would come back, eventually. Her father would never abandon her on purpose. He just forgot that she was waiting. That time passes differently for a 6-year-old child alone on the sidewalk. The first 15 minutes passed as she told Mr. Buttons stories about warrior princesses in wheelchairs who saved entire kingdoms. Sometimes, Emmy imagined herself as one of those princesses, strong, brave, important. Not just the girl her father needed to fit in between appointments. 20 minutes passed. Through the coffee shop window, she could see her father talking to a man in a suit, both gesturing over papers spread on the table. Emmy waved, but he didn't look in her direction. "He's busy," she explained to Mr. Buttons, adjusting the makeshift bow on his furry neck. "Important grown-up stuff. Half an hour now." Her father left the coffee shop, still on the phone, but with someone else. He crossed the street distractedly, walking a few feet past Emmy without noticing her, and went into an electronics store. Emmy felt that familiar feeling in her stomach, an emptiness that wasn't hunger, but something deeper. It wasn't the first time this had happened. There was the day of the school play, when she was the only child with no one in the audience, Lisa's birthday party, when she waited at the school gate for 3 hours until Lisa's mom called her dad, and now, once again, forgotten on the sidewalk. 45 minutes. The sky began to darken, grey clouds gathering quickly. People walked faster, some already opening their umbrellas. "It's going to rain," she said to Mr. Buttons, looking worriedly at the sky. The small awning of the bookstore wouldn't offer much protection if the rain came with wind. A full hour. The first drops began to fall, shyly at first. Emmy looked for her father on the street, but there was no sign of him. The electronics store across the street was crowded, and she couldn't make out the people inside. The owner of the bookstore, a lady with grey hair, came out to bring in the small bookstand that was at the entrance. "Hello, dear," she said, noticing Emmy. "Are you waiting for someone?" "My dad?" Emmy replied. "He went to take care of something quickly." The lady glanced at the darkening sky. "Do you want to wait inside? It's going to rain hard." Emmy hesitated. "I can't. What if he comes back and doesn't find me?" The lady frowned but nodded understandingly. "I'll leave the door open. If it starts to rain hard, come in, okay?" Emmy thanked her, hugging Mr. Buttons tighter. The rain picked up, and soon the first people started running along the sidewalk seeking shelter. An hour and a half. The rain was now falling heavily, and the wind was pushing it under the small awning. Emmy tried to move her chair to a more sheltered corner, but she didn't have enough strength. In minutes, she was partially wet, the water running through her brown hair and dripping onto her blue dress. The bookstore lady appeared at the door again. "Dear, come inside. You're getting soaked." "I can't," Emmy repeated, although the rain was already making Mr. Buttons heavy and wet. "He told me to wait here," the lady sighed. "I'll get something to protect you." She returned moments later with a small umbrella, which she tried to attach to the back of the chair, but the wind was too strong, and the umbrella didn't offer adequate protection. "We need to call your father," the lady insisted. "Do you have his number?" Emmy nodded, but before she could answer, a customer called the lady from inside the store. "One moment," she replied, going in quickly. In that instant, a stronger gust of wind blew the umbrella away, leaving Emmy completely exposed to the storm. The water was now streaming down her face, mixing with the tears she was trying to hold back. "He'll be back," she whispered to Mr. Buttons, who was now as drenched as she was. He just forgot the time. 2 hours. The storm was at its peak. The bookstore closed. The lady had to attend to a family emergency over the phone. She had left a note on the glass for Emmy to come inside, but the girl couldn't reach the doorknob, which was too high for her small arms. The street was practically deserted. Only a few cars passed occasionally, their headlights creating reflections in the quickly forming puddles. The cold began to seep into Emmy's bones, making her teeth chatter. Her fingers were numb, barely able to hold on to Mr. Buttons. Hunger gnawed at her stomach. The snack in her backpack was inaccessible, as she would need to take the backpack off the back of the chair, something impossible without help. "Important people can't wait," she murmured, repeating what she had so often heard her father say on the phone. "And I'm not important." That's when she heard firm footsteps approaching on the wet sidewalk. A tall figure emerged from the curtain of rain, a woman in a military uniform, dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, walking purposefully through the storm without an umbrella. Her uniform was already soaked, but she seemed indifferent to the rain. The woman stopped abruptly when she saw Emmy. Her dark eyes widened in surprise and then immediately in concern. "My God," she said, quickly approaching and crouching in front of the wheelchair. "What are you doing out here alone in all this rain?" Emmy looked at the woman, noticing the name embroidered on her uniform, Quinn. There was authority in her posture, but her eyes were kind. "I'm waiting," Emmy replied, her voice barely audible over the sound of the rain. The woman immediately took off her military jacket and placed it over Emmy's trembling shoulders. "Waiting for whom? How long have you been here?" Emmy clutched Mr. Buttons to her chest. "My dad," she answered. "He said he would be quick." The woman touched Emmy's hands and frowned. "You're freezing," she said, also touching her face. "How long have you been in this rain?" Emmy shrugged. "I don't know. The sun was still in the sky when he left." The woman's concern turned to alarm when she noticed the girl's bluish lips and the constant trembling in her small body. Where are your parents, sweetheart?" she asked, softening her voice even more. Emmy felt something break inside her chest. Maybe it was the cold, or maybe it was the kindness in the stranger's eyes. "I only have a dad," she answered, her voice choked by the cold and emotion. "But he doesn't care about me." Something dark crossed the woman's face, a mixture of anger and compassion that she quickly controlled. "What's your name, dear?" "Emmy. Emmy Royce." "Emmy," the woman repeated with a gentle smile. "I'm Harper, Harper Quinn. I'm a soldier." Harper looked around, surveying the deserted street and the storm that showed no signs of letting up. "The nanny got sick," Emmy explained, as if she needed to justify her father's absence. "He had to bring me with him, but he's busy." Harper's face hardened for a moment, but she quickly softened her expression. "For nothing is more important than you, Emmy," she said firmly. "Nothing." It was a beautiful lie, Emmy thought, one of those lies adults tell to make children feel better. But she was already 6 years old enough to know that many things were more important than her. Meetings, phone calls, work, even the coffee her father drank every morning while checking emails, barely noticing her presence. "Do you know your father's phone number?" Harper asked. "We can call him." "I do," Emmy replied, "but my phone's battery is dead." She pointed to the small pouch hanging on the wheelchair. Harper looked at the girl, shivering from the cold, her lips blue and her clothes soaked. She made a quick decision. "It's too cold and rainy out here," she said in a firm but gentle voice. I'm going to take you to that diner on the corner. We can dry off, you can have something hot to eat, and we'll call your dad from there. What do you think? Emmy hesitated. He told me to wait here. We'll leave a note, Harper replied, gesturing to the closed bookstore. Your health is more important right now. You're shivering, Emmy. The girl looked at the dark sky, the merciless rain, and the empty street. Her father wasn't coming back anytime soon. That painful truth had already settled in her heart, too small for so many disappointments. Can I bring Mr. Buttons? She asked, holding up the soaked teddy bear. Harper smiled, a smile that lit up her stern face like a ray of sunshine after the storm. Of course you can, Mr. Buttons looks like he could use a cup of hot chocolate on too, don't you think? That small kindness, acknowledging Mr. Buttons as someone important, was what won Emmy's trust. She nodded, allowing Harper to write a brief note and slip it under the bookstore's door. Harper positioned herself behind the wheelchair and began to push it carefully, shielding Emmy from the rain as much as possible with her own body. They crossed the street towards the welcoming lights of the corner diner. The diner was almost empty due to the storm. A bell chimed as they entered, and the warmth of the place enveloped Emmy like a hug she hadn't received in a long time. A middle-aged waiter approached, frowning when he saw the state they were in. My goodness, you two are drenched. Come, sit by the heater. Harper pushed the wheelchair to a table near a heater. The waiter quickly brought clean towels. Can 2 hot chocolates, please, Harper requested, and whatever hot soup you have. And a small saucer for Mr. Buttons, Emmy added shyly, holding up the bear. The waiter smiled. Of course, a special chocolate for the gentleman. While they waited, Harper helped Emmy dry her hair and placed another towel over her shoulders. Her hands were strong but gentle, and there was an efficiency in her movements that made Emmy feel safe. Are you a real soldier? Emmy asked, looking at the soaked uniform. Harper nodded. Yes, I just got back from a deployment. I'm on leave for a few weeks. Do you fight in wars? Sometimes, Harper replied with a soft smile. Fair, but most of the time, we help people who need it. The hot chocolate arrived, steaming and topped with marshmallows. Emmy wrapped her hands around the mug, feeling the warmth slowly return to her fingers. Harper took out her cell phone. Let's call your dad now. What's his number? Emmy recited the number she knew by heart, watching as Harper dialed. But after several rings, the call went to voicemail. He doesn't answer when he's in meetings, Emmy explained, as if apologizing for her father's absence. He says it's rude. Harper tried one more time, with the same result. Then she left a clear message, telling him where they were and asking him to call back urgently. The soup arrived, a creamy vegetable soup that smelled comforting. Emmy hadn't realized how hungry she was until the first spoonful. Do you like stories, Emmy? Harper asked, as the girl ate. Emmy nodded enthusiastically. I love them, especially stories about warrior princesses who save kingdoms. Warrior princesses. Not princesses who wait to be saved. No, Emmy answered seriously. Princesses who fight their own battles, like me. Harper smiled genuinely. Like you. I like that. As they ate, Harper told stories of distant places she had visited, snow-capped mountains, golden deserts, ancient forests. Emmy listened, fascinated, momentarily forgetting the abandonment and the cold. He's going to be mad, she said suddenly, concern returning to her eyes, when he finds out I came with you. Why do you think that? Because he always says not to talk to strangers. Harper took Emmy's small hand across the table. You're safe now, and that's what matters. Besides, we're not strangers anymore, are we? Emmy shook her head, a small smile forming on her lips. No, now we're friends. Outside, the storm was beginning to subside, but a new storm was just beginning. Landon Royce finished the meeting with a firm handshake and a satisfied smile. The deal was practically closed, another success to add to his growing list of achievements. As he put the documents in his leather briefcase, his cell phone vibrated in his jacket pocket. Mr. Royce, urgent messages, his assistant announced over the line. Several, actually. They can wait, he replied, checking his watch. I have another appointment in 20 minutes. Sir, they're about your daughter. An icy chill ran down his spine. Emmy, what's wrong with her? There are several missed calls from an unknown number and a voicemail. It seems someone found Emmy alone on the sidewalk during the storm. Landon's world stopped. The images flashed through his mind in violent bursts. The nanny's call in the morning. Emmy in her chair on the sidewalk in front of the bookstore. The promise to be back in 10 minutes. My God, he whispered, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. How long ago was this? The first call was almost 2 hours ago, sir. Landon dropped his briefcase, important documents scattering across the floor. It didn't matter. Nothing mattered. He ran to the elevator, frantically pressing the button as he listened to the voicemail. Mr. Royce, my name is Harper Quinn. I found your daughter Emmy alone, soaked on the sidewalk. She's with me at Maple's Diner, on the corner of 5th and Broadway. She's safe, but very scared and cold. Please, come immediately. The voice was vaguely familiar, but Landon couldn't focus on it. His daughter, his little Emmy, alone in the rain for hours. The elevator seemed to move in slow motion. Come on, he muttered, his heart pounding against his chest. How could he have forgotten? How could he have just forgotten his own daughter? When he finally reached the ground floor, Landon bolted for the exit, ignoring the surprised looks. The rain was still falling, lighter now, but he barely noticed as he ran through the wet streets. Maples was only 4 blocks away, but each step felt like an eternity. Images of Emmy alone, scared, abandoned, tormented his mind. It wasn't the first time he had neglected her. Since Sarah died 3 years ago, he had buried himself in work, using it as a shield against the pain, and Emmy, his sweet Emmy, paid the price. The Maple's Diner sign finally appeared ahead of him. Landon paused for a moment, trying to catch his breath, fixing his wet hair. What would he say to her? How could he explain the unexplainable? He pushed open the door, the bell announcing his arrival. The diner was almost empty. His eyes scanned the room until they found the small figure in a wheelchair, wrapped in towels, holding a mug of hot chocolate. And next to her, time stopped. The woman in the military uniform looked up, and Landon felt the floor disappear from under his feet. Harper. The name escaped his lips like a whisper. Harper Quinn. 8 years. 8 long years since he had last seen her. Her face was more mature, a few fine lines around her eyes, but it was still her. The same piercing eyes, the same erect posture, the same quiet strength that had always both intimidated and attracted him. "Daddy!" Emmy exclaimed, a mix of relief and fear in her small voice. Landon took a step forward, but Harper stood up, placing herself protectively beside Emmy. Her eyes, previously warm for the girl, hardened as she faced him. "She told me everything," Harper said, her voice low and controlled, but filled with a contained anger. "You always only thought about yourself." The words hit Landon like a physical blow. He wanted to protest, to explain about the important meeting, the investors, the contract that would change the company's future. But the excuses died in his throat when he saw Emmy's face, pale, with dark circles under her eyes, her eyes red from crying. "Emmy, he began, his voice failing. "She was in the rain for over 2 hours, Harper continued, crossing her arms. "Soaked, freezing, alone. Do you know what she told me? That you don't care about her." Landon felt his stomach churn. "That's not true," he whispered, approaching Emmy. "I do care, I just forgot," Harper completed, the word laced with venom. "Like you forgot our plans? Our future, She stopped, glancing quickly at Emmy, who was watching the scene with attentive and confused eyes. "This isn't the time for that," Landon said, trying to regain some control. He knelt beside Emmy's chair. "Princess, I'm sorry. I got distracted with work and there's no excuse. I'm so sorry." Emmy looked at her father, then at Harper, as if deciding who to trust. The teddy bear, now almost dry, was held firmly in her lap. "I was scared," she said finally, her voice small, I thought you had forgotten me forever." The words broke something inside Landon. "Never," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "I could never forget you forever. I made a terrible mistake today, but I promise it won't happen again." Harper watched the scene with an unreadable expression. There was history between them, years of history, broken promises, shattered dreams. But right now, it wasn't about them. It was about Emmy. "Let's go home," Landon said, standing up. "You need a warm bath and some rest." Emmy hesitated, looking at Harper. "Thank you for the chocolate and the stories," she said shyly. Harper smiled, all the hardness vanishing from her face. She crouched down to be at eye level with Emmy. "It was a pleasure to meet you and Mr. Buttons," she replied, gently tapping the bear's nose. "You are both very brave." Landon watched the interaction, a strange feeling in his chest. Harper had always had a way with children, even years ago. He remembered how she used to talk about having a family one day, how her eyes would light up seeing babies in the park. Dreams he had helped destroy with his boundless ambition. "Thank you for taking care of her," Landon said, genuine gratitude in his voice. "I don't know what would have happened if, but it did happen," Harper interrupted, standing up. "And it shouldn't have." She picked up her military jacket, now dry, and put it on. Landon noticed the insignias, the rank symbols. Harper had followed her path, built a career, a life without him. "Let's go, Emmy," Landon said, positioning himself behind the wheelchair. Emmy held onto the arm of the chair, stopping him from moving it. She looked at Harper, an urgent question in her eyes. "Can I see you again?" she asked, her voice full of hope. Harper hesitated, glancing briefly at Landon before turning her attention back to Emmy. A soft smile lit up her face. "You can, anytime you want." Something in Landon's chest tightened. Relief, jealousy, gratitude, guilt, all mixed in a confusion of emotions he couldn't decipher. Harper wrote her number on a napkin and gave it to Emmy, who carefully tucked it into the pocket of her still damp dress. "Take care, warrior," Harper said, lightly touching Emmy's shoulder. As Landon pushed the wheelchair out of the diner, the rain had stopped completely. The air was clean, as if the storm had washed the world. But inside him, a new storm was just beginning. As he placed Emmy in the car, carefully adjusting the seatbelt, he knew something fundamental had changed. Harper's reappearance, the broken trust in his daughter's eyes, the accusation that he always only thought about himself. The confrontation in the diner was over, but the real battle, for Emmy's trust, for redemption, maybe even for a chance to correct past mistakes, was just beginning. The apartment was dark when the door opened. Landon turned on the lights and pushed Emmy's wheelchair inside, closing the door behind them with a soft click. Silence immediately enveloped them, that characteristic silence of homes where something essential is missing. "Let's get you out of these wet clothes," Landon said, trying to sound cheerful as he pushed the chair down the hallway towards the bathroom. "A warm bath will make you feel better." Emmy didn't answer. She held Mr. Buttons to her chest, her distant gaze fixed on some point beyond the apartment walls. Since they left the diner, she had barely spoken. She just watched the city go by through the car window, as if looking for something or someone. The bathroom had been adapted when Emmy was born. Grab bars on the walls, a tub with a special seat, everything designed to give her independence. But today, she seemed too small, too fragile for any kind of independence. "Nice warm water, just how you like it," Landon commented, adjusting the temperature as the tub filled. He tried to meet Emmy's gaze, but she kept her head down, her fingers stroking Mr. Buttons' damp fur. Carefully, as he had done hundreds of times before, Landon lifted her into his arms and transferred her from the chair to the bath seat. Emmy's slender legs hung limply in the water as he gently removed her soaked dress. "We can wash Mr. Buttons too," he suggested, trying to break the uncomfortable silence. He got very wet in the rain. For the first time since they left the diner, Emmy looked directly at him. Her eyes, so much like her mother's, were red and tired. "He doesn't like baths," she replied simply, hugging the bear to her chest. Landon nodded, not insisting. With delicate movements, he began to wash his daughter's brown hair. massaging her scalp carefully so the shampoo wouldn't run into her eyes. It was a ritual that used to be accompanied by laughter, made-up stories, and floating toys. Today, there was only the sound of the water and Emmy's soft breathing. "That woman," Emmy began suddenly, as Landon rinsed her hair. "Harper, do you know her?" The question caught Landon by surprise. His hands paused for a moment before continuing their work. "Yes," he answered cautiously. "I knew Harper a long time ago, before you were born." "She's a soldier," Emmy said, a hint of admiration in her voice. "She told me stories about warrior princesses." Landon smiled slightly. That sounded like the Harper he knew, always full of inspiring stories, always encouraging others to be strong. "She always liked stories about heroes," he commented, gently soaping Emmy's small shoulders. "Why was she mad at you?" The innocent question hit Landon like a punch. How do you explain the complex mistakes of adults to a 6-year-old? How do you say that Harper had every right to be furious with him, not just for what happened today, but for everything that had happened years ago? "Sometimes," he began carefully, "adults hurt each other without meaning to. I think I hurt Harper in the past." "Like you hurt me today?" Emmy asked, her voice small but sharp. Landon's stomach sank. "Yes," he admitted, his throat tight. "Like I hurt you today." The bath ended in silence. Landon wrapped Emmy in a large, soft towel, drying her carefully before dressing her in her favorite pajamas, the ones with stars that glowed in the dark. He carried her to her room, the walls painted a soft shade of blue, decorated with decals of clouds and birds that Sarah had chosen before Emmy was even born. He tucked her into bed, positioning the pillows to make her comfortable, and covered her with the comforter. "Do you want me to read you a story?" he offered, pointing to the bookshelf filled with children's books in the corner of the room. Emmy shook her head, clutching Mr. Buttons to her chest. "I'm tired," she murmured, her eyes already heavy. "Of course, Princess. Get some rest." Landon leaned over and kissed her forehead, noticing it felt warmer than usual. "Sign, I'll be in the next room if you need me. Just call, okay?" Emmy nodded weakly, already closing her eyes. Landon stood there for a few moments, watching her, his chest tight with a mix of love and guilt. Finally, he turned off the light, leaving only the star-shaped nightlight on Caesar, and left the room, the door ajar so he could hear if she called. In the hallway, he leaned against the wall and let out a long, shaky sigh. The apartment had never felt so empty, so quiet. Since Sarah died in the accident 3 years ago, he had buried himself in work, using it as a shield against the pain, against the responsibility of raising a daughter with special needs on his own. And now, Harper had reappeared. Harper Quinn, with her accusing eyes and firm voice. Harper, who had known him before the fame, before the money, before he became the success-obsessed man who left his own daughter forgotten in the rain. "You always only thought about yourself," her words echoed in his mind as he walked to the kitchen and opened a bottle of whiskey. It wasn't true, or was it? There was a time when he dreamed of building something big, not just for himself, but to share with her, with the family they planned to have. But at some point, shared dreams gave way to solitary ambition. He sat on the living room sofa, glass in hand, his eyes wandering over the framed photographs on the walls. Him and Sarah on their wedding day, newborn Emmy in her mother's arms, the three of them at a picnic in the park, before the accident that took Sarah and left Emmy paralyzed from the waist down. Guilt was a constant weight on his chest. Guilt for having survived when Sarah hadn't. Guilt for not knowing how to be the father Emmy deserved, and now guilt for having failed so fundamentally that his own daughter believed he didn't care about her. The minutes turned into hours as Landon sat, lost in memories and regrets. He checked on Emmy every half hour, finding her sleeping soundly, Mr. Buttons held firmly in her arms. It was almost 2 in the morning when a sound woke him from a restless sleep on the sofa, a low moan, followed by a faint call. "Daddy!" Landon shot up, knocking over the empty glass in the process. He ran to Emmy's room, finding her restless in bed, Her face flushed and her hair stuck to her sweat-damp forehead. "Psych, I'm here, princess," he said, sitting on the edge of the bed and touching her forehead. It was burning. "What's wrong?" "Cold," Emmy murmured, shivering under the comforter. "And it hurts." "What hurts, honey?" "Everything," she replied, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Landon felt panic rising. He quickly went to the bathroom and returned with the thermometer, 103.1 degrees, a fever that was too high. "I'll get you some medicine," he said, trying to keep his voice calm as his heart raced, "and a cold compress for your forehead." In the kitchen, with trembling hands, he prepared the fever reducer the doctor had prescribed for emergencies. He soaked a washcloth in cool water and hurried back to the room. "Here, princess, this will make you feel better." He helped her swallow the medicine and placed the compress on her forehead. Emmy moaned softly, her eyes half closed, clinging to Mr. Buttons as if the bear could save her from the pain. "It hurts," she repeated, a tear rolling down her hot face. "I know, honey. The medicine will kick in soon," Landon promised, stroking her damp hair. "I'm here with you. I won't leave your side." The next few hours were a blur of changing compresses, doses of medicine, and attempts to get Emmy to drink water. The fever rose and fell, but never went down enough to ease Landon's worry. Around 4 in the morning, when the fever hit 104 degrees Celsius, he almost called an ambulance. But he remembered the doctor's instructions. It was common for children to have fever spikes when exposed to extreme conditions. If there were no other worrying symptoms, the important thing was to control the temperature and maintain hydration. "It's my fault," he whispered to his sleeping daughter, changing the compress on her forehead one more time. "I left you in the rain. I forgot about you." What kind of father does that? The guilt consumed him from the inside, mixing with the fear of losing the only truly important thing he had left. As he watched Emmy's feverish face, he remembered Harper and her harsh but true words. He had always put himself first, his goals, his career, his grief. "I'm going to change," he promised, holding Emmy's small, hot hand. "I swear I'm going to change." Outside, the night began to give way to dawn. The first rays of sun seeped through the cracks in the curtain as Emmy's fever finally started to break. Landon, exhausted but relieved, stayed by her side, checking her temperature every 15 minutes, offering water in small sips. At 7 in the morning, Emmy opened her eyes, more lucid. Her fever had dropped to 100.4 degrees, still high, but no longer frightening. "How are you feeling, princess?" Landon asked, his face marked by deep, dark circles and stubble. "Better," Emmy replied in a weak voice. "Not so hot." "That's good," Landon smiled, adjusting the pillows to make her more comfortable. "The fever is going down. Want to try eating something, maybe some oatmeal?" Emmy shook her head. "Just water." Landon nodded, helping her drink a little more water. He watched her face, still flushed from the fever, but no longer with that expression of pain that had tormented him through the night. "Emmy," he began, choosing his words carefully. It was time to try to fix things, to start rebuilding the broken trust. "About yesterday, I made a terrible mistake. So I should never have left you waiting. I should never have forgotten. The words felt inadequate, insufficient to express the depth of his regret, how much his heart ached at the thought of what could have happened. "Honey, I'm so sorry," he said finally, his voice breaking on the last word. Emmy looked at him for a long moment, her eyes, so much like Sarah's, filled with a hurt no child should know. Then, without a word, she turned her face to the other side, hugging her teddy bear. The silence that followed was more painful than any accusation. Landon swallowed hard, feeling the weight of that simple but devastating gesture. His daughter, always so loving despite everything, now couldn't even look at him. "All right," he said softly, getting up from the bed. "I'll make some oatmeal, in case you change your mind, and then I'll call Dr. Matthews to have him check on this fever." He paused at the door, looking at the small figure curled up in bed, her back to him, the bear clutched in her arms as her only comfort. "I love you, Emmy," he said, the words feeling strange on his lips, not because they weren't true, but because he realized he didn't say them often enough. "Thank more than anything in the world." He left the room, leaving the door ajar. In the hallway, he leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. The house had never felt so empty, so silent, even though they were both there. Something fundamental had been broken, and Landon wasn't sure if he knew how to fix it. The sunlight now streamed fully through the windows, illuminating the photographs on the walls, the neatly arranged toys on the shelves, all the signs of the life they had built there. But that morning, between those familiar walls, Landon Royce felt more alone than ever. 3 days had passed since the night of the fever. 3 days of heavy silence, interrupted only by brief, necessary exchanges of words. Emmy had improved physically. The fever was completely gone. The color had returned to her cheeks, but something deeper remained broken. Landon watched his daughter from a distance, feeling the chasm growing between them. She spent most of her time in her room, drawing or looking out the window, Mr. Buttons always by her side. When he entered, she didn't reject him outright, but she didn't welcome him either. She answered questions with monosyllables, avoided eye contact, and his attempts to apologize were met with that same distant look that tore him apart inside. On the morning of the 4th day, Landon made a decision. Sitting in his home office, staring at the pile of contracts he had brought from work, contracts he couldn't even begin to review, he finally admitted to himself that he didn't know how to fix this alone. He didn't know how to reach his own daughter. The napkin with Harper's phone number was in his wallet. Emmy had saved it carefully, and Landon had found it when he washed the wet dress. He thought about calling, but something inside him said this wasn't a conversation to be had over the phone. Some things needed to be said face to face. He checked the address in the online directory. Harper Quinn, apartment 304, Westmore Building, about a 30-minute drive away. He asked Mrs. Collins, the elderly neighbor who occasionally helped with Emmy, to stay with his daughter for a few hours. "She's so quiet," Mrs. Collins commented as Landon was leaving. "Did something happen?" Landon hesitated at the door. "I made a mistake," he finally admitted, "and now I'm trying to fix it." The sky was clear as he drove through the city, an ironic contrast to the storm inside him. The Westmore Building was an old red brick building with wrought iron balconies and an air of quiet dignity. He parked in front and sat in the car for a few minutes, gathering his courage. What would he say to Harper after 8 years? How would he explain that, after everything that had happened between them, he was here to ask for help? How would he admit that he had failed as a father, just as he had failed as a partner years ago? Finally, he took a deep breath and got out of the car. The lobby was simple but well kept, with dark wood floors and a small old-fashioned elevator. He went up to the 3rd floor, each step feeling like lead. Apartment 304, the door was dark blue, with a small wreath of dried flowers hanging on it, a delicate touch that seemed so characteristic of Harper. He raised his hand to knock, hesitated for a moment, and then, before he lost his nerve, he knocked 3 times. The seconds dragged on as he waited. Maybe she wasn't home. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe... The door opened, and there was Harper. Dressed casually in jeans and a simple t-shirt, her hair down and falling over her shoulders, so different from the uniformed soldier of a few days ago, but still unmistakably her. Her eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed with caution. "Landon," she said, her name coming out as a neutral statement. There was no warmth, no anger, just recognition. "Harper," he replied, suddenly feeling speechless. The whole explanation he had rehearsed in the car seemed inadequate now. Can I come in? I need to talk to you." She hesitated, her eyes studying his face as if looking for something specific. Finally, she stepped aside. "5 minutes," she said, her tone making it clear she was making a concession. The apartment was cozy, with light-colored walls decorated with photographs of places Landon didn't recognize. Mountains, deserts, distant villages. A small love seat occupied the center of the living room, with a coffee table covered in books and a still steaming cup. "I wasn't expecting company," Harper commented, removing some books from the sofa. "Sit down." Landon sat on the edge of the sofa, feeling out of place in this space that carried Harper's essence. The books, the smell of cinnamon tea, the meticulous organization that had always characterized her. "How did you find my address?" she asked, remaining standing. "Online directory," Landon replied. "I could have called, but..." "But what?" "I thought you wouldn't answer." Harper crossed her arms, a physical barrier between them. "Maybe I wouldn't have. What do you want, Landon? How is Emmy?" The mention of his daughter broke something inside him. The entire facade of composure he had maintained crumbled. "So she's not talking to me," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "She barely looks at me. I apologize. I try to talk. I try to do anything to get a reaction. But it's like I don't exist to her anymore." Harper didn't answer immediately. Her face softened a little, her concern for Emmy evident in her eyes. "She had a high fever that night," Landon continued. "So I spent the whole night by her side, afraid that..." He stopped, unable to complete the thought. "And now she's just shut down." "What did you expect?" Harper asked, her voice gentler, but still firm. "You abandoned her in the rain, Landon. For hours, she could have died of hypothermia or been kidnapped. Or..." "I know," he interrupted, running his hands through his hair in a gesture of desperation. "Believe me, I know. Not a minute goes by that I don't think about what could have happened. I have nightmares about it." Harper sighed, finally sitting in the armchair opposite him. "Why are you here, Landon? What do you want from me?" The direct question caught him off guard, even though it was exactly what he had come for. He looked at Harper, really looked at her for the first time in 8 years. He saw the small lines around her eyes, the thin, almost imperceptible scar above her left eyebrow that wasn't there before, the firmness of someone who had lived and seen a lot since they last met. "I don't know how to be a father," he finally admitted, the words coming out as a painful confession. "I never did. Sarah was the one who kept everything running, who knew what Emmy needed when she needed it. I was just a helper. And after Sarah died, I got lost." The tears he had been fighting to hold back finally escaped, silently streaming down his face. He didn't even try to hide them. "Please, help me," he asked, his voice almost a whisper. "Not for me, for Emmy. She likes you. She trusts you in a way she doesn't trust me anymore. And I don't know how to get that back. I don't know how to make her talk to me again." Harper watched him in silence for long moments. Her face was a mask of contained emotions. There was anger there, hurt, but also compassion. "You haven't changed at all, have you?" she said finally, her voice soft but filled with an old sadness. "Still expecting someone else to solve your problems, for someone else to do the emotional work for you." The words hit Landon like a physical blow, mainly because he recognized the truth in them. "Maybe," he admitted, "but I'm trying to change. I'm here, aren't I? Asking for help, admitting I don't know what to do. The old Landon would never do that." Harper gave a small, humorless smile. "The old Landon was too proud to admit any weakness. But you're only doing this because you've hit rock bottom, not because you've really changed." "It's a start," he replied, holding her gaze. "I have to start somewhere, Harper. And I'm starting by admitting I need help, that Emmy needs someone who isn't just me." Harper stood up, walking to the window. She stood with her back to him for a few moments, as if deeply pondering the decision she was about to make. "I'm not doing this for you," she said finally, turning to face him. "I'm doing it for her." An immense relief washed over Landon. "Thank you," he whispered, genuine gratitude in his voice. "Thank you so much." "Don't thank me yet," Harper warned. "I'm not promising I'll fix anything. Emmy has been through a lot. The accident, losing her mother, the wheelchair, and now this. That's a lot of layers of pain for such a little girl." Landon nodded, wiping his face. "I know. But you have a way with her. She opened up to you in that diner in a way she hasn't opened up to me in months." Harper grabbed her jacket, which was hanging near the door. "Let's go then. I don't have all day." "Now?" Landon asked, surprised by her readiness. "Do you want help or not?" Harper replied, her hand already on the doorknob. The drive back was in a charged silence. Harper looked out the passenger window, occasionally asking something about Emmy, her routine, her likes, how she was adjusting to school. Landon answered as best he could, painfully aware of how many details of his daughter's life he didn't know. "She likes to draw," he said, searching his memory for something significant to share. "Mostly warrior princesses in wheelchairs, and she loves adventure stories. Sarah used to read to her every night." "And you?" Harper asked. "Do you read to her now?" Landon swallowed hard. "Sometimes. Not as much as I should." When they arrived at the apartment, Mrs. Collins informed them that Emmy was in her room, drawing as usual. She looked curiously at Harper, but asked no questions as she said goodbye. "Emmy," Landon called, knocking softly on the bedroom door. "Can I come in? I brought someone to see you." There was no answer, but he opened the door anyway. Emmy was sitting at her small drawing table, Mr. Buttons propped up against a book beside her. She looked up, ready to revert to her distant expression upon seeing her father, when she noticed Harper behind him. Her eyes lit up instantly. Harper! The transformation was so immediate, so complete, that Landon felt a pang of jealousy and relief at the same time. Harper smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Hello, warrior," she said, approaching. "How are you feeling?" "Better," Emmy replied, her voice more cheerful than Landon had heard in days. "Look what I'm drawing." Harper leaned in to see the drawing, a figure in a military uniform next to a girl in a wheelchair, both holding what looked like swords. "Is that us?" Harper asked, touched. Emmy nodded, a small smile on her lips. "Oi, fighting monsters." Harper looked at Landon, who remained at the door, witnessing the interaction with a mixture of gratitude and sadness. With an almost imperceptible nod, she indicated that he should leave. "Emmy," Harper said, pulling up a chair to sit beside the girl. "Your dad and I talked to, and I'm going to visit you more often. Would that be nice?" "Yes," Emmy exclaimed, the enthusiasm clear in her voice. Then, as if remembering she was supposed to be upset, her smile faded slightly. "Did he tell you he forgot me in the rain?" Harper nodded, her face serious. "He did. And that was very wrong of him. He always forgets," Emmy murmured, returning to her drawing, tracing strong lines with the colored pencil. "He always has more important things." "It's hard, isn't it?" Harper asked gently. "To feel like you're not the most important thing to someone who should put you first." Emmy nodded, her eyes fixed on the paper. Harper watched her for a moment before asking softly, "Do you want to tell me how you feel?" The question hung in the air for a few seconds. Emmy kept drawing, as if she hadn't heard. But then, without looking up, she began to speak. "He was like that before, too. Before the accident, always working, always on the phone. Mom used to say he worked so hard because he loved us and wanted to give us everything." She paused, her hand stopping on the paper. "But after Mom was gone, he works even more. And I think it's because he doesn't want to be with me." "Why do you think that?" Harper asked, and keeping her voice gentle. Emmy finally looked up, and Harper saw her eyes were filled with tears. "Because it's my fault Mom is gone," she whispered. "It's my fault I'm in this chair." Harper's heart ached. "Why would it be your fault, Emmy?" The girl dropped her pencil, her small shoulders slumping as if carrying an immense weight. "I ended up in the chair after the accident," she said, her voice so low Harper had to lean in to hear. "I asked Mom to go out with me. I wanted ice cream. If we hadn't gone, she would be here." Tears were now streaming freely down Emmy's face. Harper felt her own eyes sting but maintained her composure, knowing the girl needed her strength at that moment. "It's not your fault, sweetheart," she said firmly, taking Emmy's small hands. "It was an accident. Accidents happen, and it's nobody's fault." But Emmy looked down, unable to hold her gaze. The weight of the guilt she carried was visible in every line of her small body. Harper realized that words wouldn't be enough. This was a wound too deep, too old, to be healed with simple assurances. "Sometimes," Harper continued, choosing her words carefully, "we carry burdens that aren't ours to bear. We hold on to pain so deeply that it becomes a part of us. But that doesn't mean we have to carry those burdens forever. Emmy looked at her, a silent question in her eyes. We'll work on this together, okay? Harper proposed, offering a gentle smile. Not today, not all at once, but little by little. And my dad? Emmy asked, her voice small. Does he hate me because Mom is gone because of me? The question hit Harper like a punch. No, Emmy, no, she replied, with all the conviction she could muster. Your dad doesn't hate you. He loves you very much. He just doesn't know how to show it right now. He's lost, just like you. Did he send you to say that? Emmy asked, a suspicion beyond her years appearing in her eyes. Harper shook her head. No, I'm telling you what I see. And what I see is a father who has made mistakes, but who wants to fix things. Emmy didn't seem convinced, but she didn't completely reject the idea either. She returned to her drawing, adding details to the figures fighting side by side. Can I tell you a secret? Harper asked after a few moments of silence. Emmy looked at her, curious. I've felt guilty for things that weren't my fault too, Harper confessed. And I carried that weight for a long, long time. Until I realized I was punishing myself for something I couldn't control. And how did you stop feeling guilty? Emmy asked. Harper smiled softly. By finding people who helped me see the truth. And maybe I can be that person for you. Outside the room, leaning against the hallway wall, Landon listened to the conversation, tears silently streaming down his face. The weight of the realization was overwhelming. His daughter believed he hated her, that he blamed her for Sarah's death, that his distance was a punishment, not a cowardly escape from his own pain. And in that moment, he knew that Harper was exactly what they both needed. Not just to help Emmy, but to show him how to be the father his daughter deserved. Royce Enterprises occupied the top 3 floors of a skyscraper downtown. Glass and steel, modern lines, and an impeccable reception reflected the success Landon had built in recent years. The company logo, a stylized R in metallic blue, dominated the wall behind the receptionist, who looked curiously at Harper as she stepped out of the elevator. Harper wore her full military dress uniform, not out of obligation, she was on leave, but as a strategic choice. The uniform carried authority, commanded respect, and at that moment, she needed all the strength she could muster. Can I help you? The receptionist asked, her professional smile assessing the unexpected visitor. I need to see Landon Royce, Harper replied, her tone leaving no room for negotiation. Mr. Royce is in a meeting. Do you have an appointment? No, Harper said simply, but he'll see me. Tell him Harper Quinn is here. Something in her tone made the receptionist hesitate before picking up the phone. She spoke briefly with someone, casting discreet glances at Harper as she waited. Miss Quinn, Mr. Royce's assistant will come to escort you. Please wait a moment. Harper nodded, standing erect, her hands clasped behind her back in a military posture. Her eyes scanned the room. Everything screamed success, power, money. Everything Landon had ever wanted. Everything he had sacrificed so much for, including his family. A young man in a suit appeared less than a minute later, his face betraying surprise at the sight of the uniformed woman. Ms. Quinn, I'm James, Mr. Royce's assistant, if you'll follow me. Is he in a meeting? Harper asked as they walked down the hall. Yes, with the investors for the Thames project. It's a very important meeting, but he agreed to see me anyway, Harper completed. The assistant nodded, clearly intrigued. He said to interrupt immediately. That surprised Harper. The Landon she knew would never interrupt an important meeting for anyone. Maybe there was hope, after all. They were led through a labyrinth of elegant corridors to a large conference room. Through the glass walls, Harper could see Landon standing before a screen, presenting charts to a group of men and women in formal attire. He stopped mid-sentence when he saw her, and something on his face changed. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize, but we need to take a break, he announced, his professional tone barely hiding his surprise. James, please offer coffee and take our investors to the break room. We will return in 15 minutes. There were murmurs of discontent, but no one protested openly as they filed out. In a few moments, only Harper and Landon remained in the room. "Harper," he said, loosening his tie, "did something happen to Emmy?" "Not today," she replied, closing the glass door behind her. "But it's been happening for a long time, and you're not seeing it." Landon frowned, confused. "What are you talking about? I've been spending more time with her since that day. I try to talk, even if she barely answers." "It's not about spending time, Landon," Harper said, approaching the table. "It's about really seeing your daughter, hearing what she isn't saying." "I'm trying," he insisted, frustration evident in his voice, "but she won't talk to me." "She only opens up to you." Harper placed her hands on the conference table, leaning forward slightly. "Do you know why Emmy shut down after the accident? Why she rarely smiles, rarely talks about what she feels?" Landon blinked, caught off guard by the direct question. "Because of the trauma. Losing her mother, becoming paralyzed. Any child would be traumatized. It's not just that," Harper replied, keeping her gaze fixed on him. "Emmy blames herself for the accident. She believes she killed her own mother." Landon's face went pale. "What? That's absurd. Why would she think that?" "Because she was the one who asked to go out that day. She was the one who wanted ice cream. In her mind, if they hadn't gone out, Sarah would still be alive." Landon sank heavily into a chair, as if his legs could no longer support him. "My God, she never said anything." "Of course not. Do you think a child who believes she caused her own mother's death is just going to mention it over dinner?" Harper's voice was firm but not accusatory. "Landon, do you have any idea the weight she has been carrying for 3 years? A 6-year-old believing she's responsible for her mother's death and her own condition." He covered his face with his hands, the shock giving way to a painful understanding. "How did I not see this?" "Because you were too busy running from your own pain," Harper replied, softening her tone slightly. "You dove into work, left Emmy with nannies and housekeepers, and when you were home, you were absent, even when you were present." Landon didn't try to deny it. There was no denying the truth Harper laid before him, raw and undeniable. "So now what?" he asked, looking at Harper with something close to desperation. "How can I fix this?" Harper straightened her posture, the uniform accentuating her commanding presence in the luxurious room. "You're losing your daughter," she said, each word clear and direct. "She thinks she killed her mother. It's time to act. Or you'll regret it." It wasn't a threat, but a statement of fact, simple and devastating in its truth. Landon looked down, overcome by the weight of the reality he had tried to ignore for so long. Outside the room, his assistants watched with curiosity. Investors checked their watches impatiently. Charts and projections awaited his conclusion. The empire he had built continued to run, demanding his attention, his energy, his time. "James," he called, pressing the intercom without taking his eyes off Harper. "Come in here, please." The assistant appeared almost instantly, notepad in hand, ready for any instruction. "Cancel everything tomorrow," Landon said, his voice calm but decisive. "I'll be out all day." James blinked, visibly surprised. "Sir, the meeting with the Japanese investors has been scheduled for months, and then we have the lunch with the board, followed by the quarterly presentation to the shareholders." "Cancel everything," Landon repeated, more firmly this time. "Tell them it's a family emergency." "Yes, sir," James replied, casting a curious glance at Harper before leaving. When they were alone again, Harper allowed herself a small smile. "It's a start," she conceded, "but one day won't fix 3 years." "I know," Landon replied, standing up, "but it's where I can start." "What do you have in mind?" Harper walked to the window, looking out at the city below, tiny people hurrying through their lives, cars in constant motion, the world moving on, indifferent to the private dramas unfolding inside that skyscraper. "First, you need to lift that burden of guilt from her," she said, turning to face him. "She needs to hear from you, specifically from you, that the accident wasn't her fault, that you don't blame her, that you never blamed her." "I never blamed her," Landon protested. "How could she think that?" Because you never said otherwise, Harper replied simply. And in silence, especially for children, the worst fears grow. Landon nodded slowly, painful understanding in his eyes. And after that, one step at a time, Harper said. She needs to feel safe again. Loved, unconditionally. She needs to trust that you won't disappear, won't forget her, won't put anything else before her. Outside, James was making gestures indicating that the investors were getting impatient. Landon ignored him. I can finish this meeting in 20 minutes, he said. And then I need your help to plan for tomorrow. It will be just for Emmy. No phone, no work. Harper nodded, approving the decision. I'll be there tonight to help. As Landon called the investors back in, Harper watched him with a mix of cautious hope. The man before her was no longer the ambitious young man she had known so long ago, nor the cold executive who had forgotten his daughter in the rain. He was someone in between, someone struggling to find balance, to learn from past mistakes. The battle would be long, and the outcome uncertain. But for the first time since she had re-encountered Landon, Harper felt that maybe, just maybe, there was hope for Emmy, and that was all that mattered. The clock read 5:30 when the apartment door opened. Normally, this time would find Emmy having dinner with the nanny, but not today. Good evening, Mrs. Martinez, Landon said, surprising the nanny in the kitchen. You can leave early. I'll take it from here. The woman looked at him in astonishment. Are you sure, Mr. Royce? Dinner isn't ready yet, and I'm sure, he interrupted gently. Where's Emmy? In her room, drawing as usual. Landon headed to his daughter's room, pausing at the ajar door. Emmy was focused on her drawing, Mr. Buttons propped up against a book beside her. The late afternoon light created a golden halo around her brown hair. He knocked softly. Can I come in? Emmy glanced at him briefly and returned her attention to the drawing without responding. Landon entered, leaving his jacket on a chair and loosening his tie. Can I stay here with you? He asked, approaching cautiously. Emmy didn't answer but continued drawing. There was no refusal, just silence, neither welcome nor rejection. Landon sat on the floor beside her, his back against the wall. The drawing showed a girl in a wheelchair holding the hand of a woman in uniform. The figures were in a colorful garden, and both were smiling. It was easy to recognize Emmy and Harper. That's very beautiful, he commented, genuinely impressed. You draw flowers very well. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched Emmy's lips before disappearing. She picked up a purple pencil and continued coloring. Harper called me today, Landon said after a few minutes. She asked how you were. Emmy paused for an instant, then continued, seemingly indifferent, but her shoulders straightened. She's coming over tomorrow night for dinner with us, if that's okay with you. Okay, Emmy replied in a low voice, her first words to him that day. Landon felt relief at hearing her voice. Great, we can order that pizza you like. The silence returned, but it was less heavy. Landon watched as Emmy completed her drawing, adding a bright sun in the corner of the paper. They didn't speak again, but there was something comforting in just being there, sharing the same space. When it got dark, Landon stood up. I'm going to finish making dinner. Mrs. Martinez started some mac and cheese. Your favorite. Emmy nodded without looking at him, but as he was at the door, she spoke again. Can you leave the light on? She said, pointing to the night light. Of course, Princess Yont, he replied, feeling a flicker of hope at the small request. They had dinner together, the conversation still minimal. Landon told her about a bird that had landed on his office window, and Emmy listened attentively. Afterwards, he helped her with her bath and put her to bed, reading a short story before saying goodnight. As he closed the bedroom door, Landon felt a determination growing inside him. Harper was right. His daughter needed him now more than ever. The next morning brought a clear sky. Landon woke up early, a rare thing for a Saturday, and made pancakes with strawberries and whipped cream. At 8 o'clock, he knocked softly on Emmy's bedroom door. Good morning, sleepyhead, he called, entering with a tray. Time to wake up. Emmy rubbed her sleepy eyes, confused by her father's presence so early. Normally, even on weekends, he would already be on the phone. Landon placed the tray on the small table and opened the curtains, letting light flood the room. "Today, we're going out, just the two of us," he announced with a smile. "No phone, no work." Emmy looked at him suspiciously, as if expecting him to cancel at any moment. "Really?" she asked, surprise evident in her voice. Landon sat on the edge of the bed, holding her gaze. "Today is all yours." Something changed in Emmy's eyes, a sparkle he hadn't seen in a long time. She didn't quite smile, but she nodded, a small spark of hope illuminating her face. They had breakfast together, and then Landon helped Emmy get ready. He chose casual clothes for himself, jeans and a t-shirt, something he rarely wore. When she was ready, Emmy was waiting for him in the living room, wearing a yellow dress that Sarah had bought for her before the accident. "You look beautiful," Landon said, emotional at seeing her in that dress full of memories. "Mommy liked this dress," Emmy replied simply. "Yes, she did," he agreed. "She said you looked like a ray of sunshine." The city seemed different that Saturday morning, more alive, more colorful. He drove to Central Park, a huge green space that Emmy loved. "Remember the last time we came here?" Landon asked as he pushed the wheelchair along the paved path. "It was with Mommy," Emmy replied. "How we had a picnic by the lake." "That's right," Landon agreed, surprised she remembered. "It had been over 3 years. You wanted to feed the ducks, but I said we couldn't. And Mommy hid bread in her pockets and let me throw it when you weren't looking," Emmy completed, a small smile forming on her lips. Landon laughed. "Your mother always broke the rules for the right reasons." They walked in silence for some time, Landon pushing the chair at a leisurely pace. The park was full of families enjoying the sunny day, children running, dogs barking, couples holding hands. Near the lake, they stopped to watch the ducks. An ice cream vendor passed by, the colorful cart catching Emmy's attention. "Want some ice cream?" Landon offered. Emmy nodded shyly. "Can I have chocolate with strawberry topping?" "Of course you can," he replied, smiling at the simplicity of the request. When he returned with the ice cream, he found Emmy watching a girl about her age playing frisbee with her father. There was a shadow of sadness in her eyes. "Here you go, princess," he said, handing her the ice cream. "Be careful not to get it on your dress." Emmy took the ice cream but continued to watch the girl and her father. "They look happy," she commented. Landon followed her gaze. "Yes, they do. Were you happy with me and Mommy?" Emmy asked suddenly. The question caught him by surprise. "Of course I was," he replied, crouching down to be at her eye level. "Those were the happiest times of my life. But you're not happy now," she said, as a statement of fact. "That's not it, Emmy. It's just, after your mum was gone, I didn't know how to deal with the pain. So I buried myself in work, because there I didn't have to think, I didn't have to feel." "You don't like being with me because I remind you of Mommy?" she asked, her big eyes fixed on his. "No, my love. No," he replied firmly. "I love being with you. You're the best part of my life. It's just that I've been a coward, running away instead of facing it." Emmy looked at her melting ice cream. "I miss her too," she said quietly. "I know you do, and we have every right to, but we can't let that feeling stop us from living." They ate their ice cream in silence, watching the ducks on the lake. When they finished, Landon pushed the chair to a bench shaded by a large tree. He helped Emmy sit beside him, something they rarely did. The moment had come. Landon knew he couldn't put it off any longer. "You know, I've been thinking a lot lately," he began. "About the accident, about you and Mommy." Emmy stiffened beside him but didn't look away. "Harper told me something that broke my heart," Landon continued. "And she told me you blame yourself for what happened to Mommy." Emmy's eyes widened in shock and fear, as if a terrible secret had been exposed. "She shouldn't have told you," she whispered, tears starting to form. "She did the right thing, my love," Landon replied gently. "Because I needed to know. I needed to know you were carrying this horrible burden alone." A tear rolled down Emmy's face. Landon wiped it away with his thumb. "Honey, I want you to know that you are not to blame for what happened to Mommy," he said, holding her hand firmly. It was an accident. You just wanted some ice cream. I should have told you this sooner. But if I hadn't asked to go out, Emmy began, her voice choked with emotion. No, my love, it doesn't work like that, Landon interrupted. Accidents happen, and it's nobody's fault. That driver was drunk. He is to blame, not you. Never you. The tears now flowed freely down Emmy's face, years of self-imposed guilt finally finding an escape. You don't hate me, she asked in an almost inaudible whisper. Hate you? Emmy, you're everything to me. All I have left. How could I ever hate you? Something broke inside Emmy. She rested her head on his chest, crying softly, her small shoulders trembling. Landon held her as if he would never let go, his own tears falling silently onto her hair. They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other under the tree, letting the tears wash away years of unexpressed pain. For Landon and Emmy, the world had shrunk to that bench, that moment, that reconnected bond. When the tears stopped, Emmy looked up at her father with red but lighter eyes, as if an immense weight had been lifted from her small shoulders. Can we be happy again? She asked, and with hope in her voice. Landon smiled through his own tears. We're already on our way, Princess. They spent the rest of the day in the park, talking more openly than they had in years. Emmy told him about school, about how some kids treated her differently because of the chair. Landon listened attentively, promising himself he would be more present. As the sun began to set, they decided to head home. Emmy was exhausted, the emotional toll of the day finally catching up with her. In the car, less than 5 minutes after leaving the park, she fell asleep in the back seat, Mr. Buttons held securely in her arms. Landon glanced in the rearview mirror, watching his daughter's peaceful face. For the first time in a long time, she seemed truly at peace. The lines of worry finally softened by sleep. A comforting feeling filled his chest, the certainty that, for the first time since Sarah's death, he was doing something right. Not as a CEO, not as a businessman, but as a father. As the father Emmy deserved. When they arrived, Landon lifted her into his arms, surprised by how light she was, how fragile she seemed in his embrace. He carried her to the apartment, feeling her heart beat against his, her soft breath on his neck. Gently, he laid her in bed, removing only her shoes before covering her. Mr. Buttons remained firmly in her hug. He sat on the edge of the bed for a moment, watching his sleeping daughter, his chest full of love. I love you, Princess, he whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her face, and I'll never let you feel alone again. It was a promise, to Emmy, to himself, and maybe even to Sarah, wherever she was. A promise that, this time, he was determined to keep. Dinner had been a success. The pizza, half pepperoni, half 4 cheese, had quickly disappeared amidst stories and, for the first time in weeks, the sound of Emmy's genuine laughter. The change in the girl was subtle but undeniable. The trip to the park with her father had begun to unravel knots of guilt and abandonment that a 6-year-old should never have to carry. Harper washed the dishes after Landon and Emmy left, reflecting on her unexpected role in this story. 3 lives intertwined by chance, or fate, depending on how you looked at it. There was something ironic about helping Landon rebuild his relationship with his daughter when her own history with him was filled with broken promises. The clock read 9:17 when the intercom buzzed. Harper dried her hands on a dish towel, frowning. She wasn't expecting visitors at this hour. Yes? Harper, it's me, Landon. Can I come up? The surprise left her momentarily speechless. He had left just over an hour ago, taking a sleepy Emmy home. Of course, she finally replied, pressing the button. While she waited, Harper looked around the apartment. It wasn't large or luxurious, nothing compared to what she knew Landon owned, but it was her sanctuary. Books stacked on shelves told stories of places she had served. Photographs on the walls captured landscapes of distant countries. Small souvenirs brought back from humanitarian missions gave the space a unique personality. It was a modest but genuine home. The knock on the door came exactly 2 minutes later. Harper took a deep breath, instinctively adjusted her posture as she had learned in the army, and opened it. Landon stood in the hallway, without a jacket, the sleeves of his shirt rolled up to his elbows, his hair slightly disheveled, as if he had run his hands through it repeatedly. His eyes revealed a mix of nervousness and determination. "Sorry to show up unannounced," he said. "Emmy is with Mrs. Martinez. I needed to talk to you." Harper stepped aside, inviting him in with a silent gesture. Landon entered, his eyes scanning the apartment, taking in the details that made up the life Harper had built during their 8 years apart. "Nice place," he commented, stopping in the center of the living room. "Muy very you." "Thanks," Harper replied, crossing her arms. "It's not big, but it serves its purpose." Landon nodded, his gaze shifting to one of the photographs on the wall. Harper with a group of children in some dusty, sunny place, all smiling despite the difficult circumstances the scenery suggested. "Where was this?" he asked. "Sudan," she replied. "Peacekeeping mission 3 years ago. We helped build a school and a medical post." Landon continued to look at the photo. "They look happy despite everything." "Children are resilient," Harper said. "More than we imagine. Like Emmy." The mention of his daughter seemed to bring Landon back to the present, to the purpose of his visit. He turned to face Harper, his hands fidgeting by his sides. "She's different," he said. "After the trip to the park, after we finally talked about the accident, it's like a weight has been lifted from her shoulders." "It was too heavy a burden for a child to carry alone," Harper replied, "especially believing you blamed her." "I never," he started but stopped. "You're right. I never explicitly said I didn't blame her, so she assumed the worst. Kids do that." A silence settled between them, not completely uncomfortable, but filled with unsaid words, interrupted stories, a shared past that both had tried, unsuccessfully, to leave behind. "Harper," Landon finally broke the silence, his voice softer than she remembered. "I came to thank you, and to ask for forgiveness, and I wanted to try to make things right with you too." The words hung in the air between them, laden with implications. Harper felt her heart race, a mix of conflicting emotions surfacing, caution, hope, fear, and something else she didn't want to name. "Make things right," she repeated, keeping her voice controlled. "Landon, it's been 8 years. We're different people now." "I know," he replied. "Believe me, I know. But seeing you with Emmy, how she trusts you, how you understand what she needs even when she doesn't say it, it made me realize how much I lost, how much I threw away." Harper walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. She remembered nights in military tents, staring at starry skies in distant deserts, wondering if she had made the right choice in leaving him, if the path she had chosen to heal her wounds had been the best one. "You didn't throw it away," she said finally, her voice lower. You chose your career, your ambitions. And I chose to walk away." She turned to face him, years of repressed feelings finally finding expression. "I left your life because I couldn't take it anymore. You would make plans and cancel at the last minute. I felt invisible. Living for your work destroyed me. Later, I found out I was pregnant, but I lost it. And then, nothing made sense anymore. I enlisted in the army to try to help other people and forget my own trauma." Landon's face went completely pale. He staggered as if he had taken a physical blow, leaning against the nearest wall to steady himself. "Pregnant," he repeated, his voice almost inaudible. "We were going to... And you never told me." "I was going to tell you that night," Harper replied, the memory still painfully vivid. "March 17th. I had prepared everything. Your favorite dish, red wine for you, a small wrapped gift with the pregnancy test inside. You called an hour before saying an important client had come up, that you had to reschedule, that you'd make it up to me over the weekend." She paused, the old pain resurfacing with a surprising intensity. "It was the last straw. I realized it would always be like that. Me waiting, you canceling, our son or daughter learning from an early age that their father's work would always come first." "Harper, I didn't know, Landon said, his voice choked. If you had told me. What? Would it have been different? She asked, without accusation, just genuine curiosity. Would you have ditched that important meeting? Would you have rearranged your priorities? Landon opened his mouth to answer, but closed it again. The truth hung between them. He probably wouldn't have changed, not back then, not being who he was. And the baby, he finally asked, his voice breaking on the last word. Harper took a deep breath, the old sorrow still present, but softer now, worn down by time. I lost it 2 weeks later. Maybe the stress of the breakup, maybe it just wasn't meant to be. The doctors said it happens sometimes, for no apparent reason. She saw the tears begin to stream down Landon's face, silent and heavy. She made no move to comfort him. That pain was his to feel, just as hers had been to carry alone for all these years. Why didn't you come to me after? He asked. Even if we were separated, I had a right to know. A right? Harper repeated, a spark of irritation flaring. Maybe. But I was devastated, Landon. Devastated from losing you, from losing the baby, from watching all my dreams fall apart at once. I wasn't thinking about rights. I was trying to survive. Landon nodded slowly, tears still marking his face. When I enlisted, it was like starting from scratch, Harper continued, her voice softening. Show the intense physical training, the discipline, the structure. It was exactly what I needed. And then, on missions, helping people who had lost everything, I found a purpose, I found healing. And I dove even deeper into work, Landon said, wiping his face with the back of his hand. I built the company, made a fortune, married Sarah because she seemed to understand my ambition to have the same goals. Did you love her? Harper asked, surprising herself with the question. Landon considered for a moment. Yes, in my own way. Not like I loved you. But there was affection, respect. She was brilliant, determined. We understood each other. He paused, staring into the void. After she died and Emmy was left in the wheelchair, I didn't know how to cope. I sank even further into work, using it as a shield, and I ended up doing to my daughter exactly what I did to you, putting her second, making her feel invisible. Harper looked at the man before her, no longer the ambitious young man full of dreams and promises, nor the cold, calculating executive who prioritized business over relationships, but someone in between. Someone trying to find balance, trying to learn from past mistakes. And now, she asked, what do you want, Landon? He looked up, meeting her gaze. There was a vulnerability in his eyes she had never seen before. I never forgot you. Never. Can we try again? Emmy really likes you. And so do I. The sincerity in his voice, the humility in his words, caught Harper off guard. She had expected many things from this conversation, but not this complete surrender, this total openness. Landon, it's not that simple, she replied after a long moment. We can't just pretend the last 8 years didn't happen. I'm not asking for that, he said, taking a hesitant step towards her. I don't want to erase the past. I want to build something new, something better, with everything we've learned, with all the scars we carry. And Emmy, Harper asked, she has to come first. She's been through too much loss already. Absolutely, Landon agreed without hesitation. She is my priority now, my only priority. Harper was silent, evaluating the man before her, weighing his words against his actions, the past against the present. When she finally spoke, there was no longer anger in her eyes, just caution and perhaps a small spark of hope. And let's take it slow, she said, one step at a time. For Emmy. The relief on Landon's face was palpable. For Emmy, he agreed, and maybe, one day, for us. 4 weeks later, the park was painted with the colors of autumn, reds, oranges and golds creating a natural mosaic under their feet. The air was crisp but pleasant, perfect for a Sunday outdoors. Emmy had insisted on bringing Mr. Buttons, now adorned with a small scarf that Harper had knitted especially for him. "He needs to stay warm," Emmy had explained seriously. "Fall is tricky. It can get cold suddenly." The progress in recent weeks had been steady, though cautious. Harper had dinner with them 2 or 3 times a week. Landon had completely reorganized his work schedule, delegating responsibilities, turning down long trips, coming home in time for dinner every day. Slowly, Emmy's confidence blossomed, not just in her father, but in herself. Landon pushed the wheelchair along the paved path, while Harper walked beside them, occasionally pointing out a particularly bold squirrel or a colorful bird. Emmy held Harper's hand with her right hand, and every so often, she would reach out her left to hold Landon's, who would lean down to reach it. "Shall look at all the leaves," Emmy exclaimed, pointing to a particularly large oak tree that was shedding golden leaves with every breeze. "Can we make a collection?" "Of course we can," Harper replied, already bending down to pick up some of the prettiest ones. "We can press them between the pages of a book when we get home, and then make a scrapbook." "Like the one you have from your travels?" Emmy asked, her eyes shining. "Exactly like that one," Harper confirmed, handing her a perfectly red leaf. They reached a bench under a large maple tree, its leaves creating a golden canopy above them. Landon helped Emmy transfer from the chair to the bench, positioning her between them. "I have a story to tell," Harper announced, as she organized the collected leaves. "About a very brave princess who lived in a kingdom of enchanted trees." "Did the princess have a wheelchair?" Emmy asked, adjusting Mr. Buttons on her lap. "Of course she did," Harper replied with a smile. "The most magical chair in the whole kingdom, decorated with golden leaves and able to fly over the treetops when needed." Emmy laughed, a crystal-clear sound that seemed to light up the entire park. Harper began her story, elaborating on fantastic details about the adventures of the warrior princess and her faithful companion, a talking teddy bear who gave wise advice at the most critical moments. Landon watched the two of them, a sense of gratitude and peace spreading through his chest. It wasn't perfect. There were still hard days, moments when the past weighed heavily, when absences were felt. Emmy still faced daily challenges with her condition, still had occasional nightmares. He and Harper were still learning to navigate their reborn relationship with caution and honesty. But there was something here, in this simple moment in the park, that seemed almost miraculous, a second chance that none of them had expected to find. When Harper finished her story, Emmy applauded enthusiastically, making Mr. Buttons applaud too. "My turn to tell one," Landon said, surprising them both. "Once upon a time, there was a very foolish man who thought success meant money and power." Harper raised her eyebrows, surprised by the transparency of the metaphor, but Emmy just tilted her head, listening intently, until he lost the people he loved and realized he was completely wrong. Landon continued, "Not true success was being with the ones you love, creating memories, sharing moments like this." Emmy smiled, leaning against her father's arm. "And did the man learn his lesson?" she asked. "He's learning," Landon replied, meeting Harper's gaze over the girl's head. "A little more each day." Harper smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. She reached her hand over Emmy's shoulders, gently taking Landon's. It was a small, almost casual gesture, but filled with meaning. A silent acknowledgement of the path traveled and the journey still ahead. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange. A gentle wind stirred the leaves above them, some falling like silent blessings on their shoulders. Emmy lifted her face, trying to catch a particularly beautiful leaf that danced in the air. True love doesn't erase the past, but it builds a present where no one feels alone. It was a lesson they had learned the hard way, through loss and pain, through years of separation and regret. But now, sitting on that bench, under the golden light of autumn, they knew that the future, whatever its form, would be faced together.